Tonight, the UK's former ambassador to the US is arrested and questioned by police. Peter Mandelson was led away from his home by plainclothes police after officers searched 2 of his properties. He's being held over alleged misconduct in public office after apparently sharing sensitive government documents with the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. That's as calls grow for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, who's being investigated for a similar crime, to be removed from the line of succession. 2 high-profile arrests within 4 days as the UK grapples with the fallout from the Epstein scandal. We'll have the latest from London and Washington. Plus, across Mexico, a wave of violence with tourists and residents warned to stay indoors. That's all because this notorious drug lord was killed in a military operation. So who is El Mencho, and how big a role did the US play in his killing? And on the front line with the drone hunters of Ukraine, almost 4 years since the Russian invasion. That's all coming up on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening. He was the man chosen by the Prime Minister to help safeguard the special relationship. Just 5 months ago, Peter Mandelson was the UK's man in Washington, the so-called Trump whisperer. Tonight, he is in police custody, facing questions for allegedly leaking sensitive government documents to the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Our chief political correspondent, John Craig, has tonight's first report.
A very public arrest. It was just before 4:45 in the afternoon, in broad daylight and in full view of TV cameras and photographers, that Peter Mandelson was led from his London home by police officers and taken to a police station to be interviewed. Around half an hour earlier, the same officers had been seen arriving at Mandelson's home. And minutes after the former peer was driven from his home in an unmarked car, the Metropolitan Police confirmed he'd been arrested. Officers have arrested a 72-year-old man on suspicion of misconduct in public office, said a spokesperson. He was arrested at an address in Camden on Monday, 23rd of February, and has been taken to a London police station for interview. This follows search warrants at 2 addresses in the Wiltshire and Camden areas. Those searches began at both addresses more than 2 weeks ago, and police officers were later seen taking boxes away. It's Mandelson's friendship with the American financier and convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein that's led to this dramatic fall from grace.
Well, Mr. President, thank you very much indeed in hosting us this morning.
Less than 6 months ago, he was British ambassador in Washington, the UK's most glittering diplomatic posting, before being sacked by Sir Keir Starmer in September.
Are you embarrassed for putting your trust in Peter Mandelson, Prime Minister? What does it say about your judgment, Prime Minister?
Earlier last year, he told Sky News of his regret about his association with Epstein.
My knowledge of him is something that I regret. I wish I'd never met him in the first place.
But the release of the Epstein files, suggesting he shared government information with Epstein when he was a cabinet minister under Gordon Brown, may have prompted the police investigation. Mandelson's arrest comes just 4 days after the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor over his actions as a government trade envoy.
These are extraordinary moments. What we need to remember, though, I think, is that the police investigations in both cases, and they're separate investigations, one by Thames Valley Police, this by the Metropolitan Police, are in the early stages. There may be other documents and emails held on digital devices at Mandelson's homes in Wiltshire or Camden that they will have wanted to look at.
Mandelson's arrest is a huge blow for Sir Keir Starmer, and the Conservatives are turning up the heat on the Prime Minister.
I asked him if he had full confidence in Peter Mandelson just a few months ago, and he said yes, despite all of these allegations being known. Only to see the man arrested shows that the Prime Minister has a terrible judgment. He's weak. He could have done more.
Mandelson continues to deny wrongdoing, and Labour ministers insist the Prime Minister acted decisively.
As soon as Keir Starmer understood what the reality of Peter Mandelson's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein was, he sacked him in the middle of the night, actually. So, I think that's an important area of judgment.
But for Mandelson personally, his arrest is the latest humiliation in a spectacular downfall for someone formerly at the heart of the Labour High Command. John Craig, Sky News.
Well, under UK law, the Metropolitan Police has 24 hours to question, release or apply for more time to hold the former ambassador. Peter Mandelson was forced out of his role in Washington after it became clear that he remained close to Jeffrey Epstein, even after he was convicted of sex abuse. More recent emails released as part of the Epstein files appears to show him forwarding correspondence to the paedophile while he was business secretary. Tom Cheshire has more details.
Peter Mandelson has been arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. So what does that mean? Well, the Crown Prosecution Service defines it as when someone holding public office willfully neglects to perform their duty and or willfully misconducts themselves to such a degree as to amount to an abuse of the public's trust in the office holder without reasonable excuse or justification. Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor was arrested on suspicion of the same offence. We don't know what evidence the Met Police may have considered before making this arrest. Mandelson has consistently denied any wrongdoing. The latest files painted a picture of Epstein's reach in the highest circles of power, politics and celebrity. And the two arrests in the wake of their release are a vivid example of that. Peter Mandelson features extensively in them, as photos in the files attest. Again, being included in the files is not evidence of any wrongdoing. But Mandelson was often photographed at Epstein's side in multiple locations over multiple years. Here, Mandelson is pictured on a yacht with Epstein and others. And here he is celebrating Epstein's 54th birthday. Now, this photo, also part of the files, shows how Mandelson was comfortable around Epstein, even when being photographed. Mandelson's association with Epstein was public knowledge, very public knowledge. But the files did shed new light on its nature. First off, its length. This is from 2009. Mandelson wrote to Epstein, "You are the only person who knows everything about me. Don't go away." To be more precise, the date is May 2009. This is while Epstein was still serving a sentence in Florida for procuring child prostitution. There are casual, jokey intimacies in the documents. This is 2.5 years later. Mandelson writing to Epstein, "You don't care about me anymore." Epstein replying, "Rubbish." Mandelson was happy to discuss politics too. In 2009, Mandelson's assistant emailed Epstein a government speech here before it was delivered. And this email was sent while Mandelson was Secretary of State for the Department of Business, Innovation and Skills. In 2010, as governments were struggling to deal with the financial crisis, there was this exchange. Epstein emails Mandelson, "Sources tell me a €500 billion bailout, almost complete." Mandelson says, "Should be announced tonight." Epstein asks, "Are you home?" Mandelson replies, "Just leaving number 10, will call." Again, we don't know what evidence the Met Police may have considered before making this arrest, and Mandelson has consistently denied any wrongdoing.
Cheshire reporting there. Well, our US correspondent James Matthews is live for us in Washington. But first, let's speak to Molly Malone, who's outside Peter Mandelson's North London home. Molly, I mean, there's been a flurry of activity outside of his home, frankly, throughout the day.
Yeah, and throughout the last couple of weeks at points, Yauda, we've known for weeks that the police have been investigating Peter Mandelson. Indeed, we've seen them conduct searches here at his central London home, just opposite Regent's Park, and another connected to Peter Mandelson down in southern England, down in Wiltshire. But the significant development came just after 5 o'clock this evening as the Metropolitan Police here in London announced that they'd arrested a 72-year-old man on suspicion of misconduct in a public office. And we saw those pictures of Peter Mandelson being led out of his home by two officers in plain clothes, taking him to an unmarked police car. Now, as we know, this has all been triggered by that huge release of documents by the US Justice Department, which appeared to show Peter Mandelson allegedly directly communicating with Jeffrey Epstein when he was business secretary at the height of the new Labour government, when he was close to the Downing Street operation, when he was a cabinet minister, allegedly sharing sensitive government, market-sensitive information with Jeffrey Epstein, appearing allegedly to share confidential and private information about a potential EU bailout. It's worth saying, reminding people that Peter Mandelson has long denied any wrongdoing. He's said himself that he regrets his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, regrets continuing that relationship, but the significant announcement coming this evening that they have now arrested Peter Mandelson on suspicion of misconduct in a public office.
Molly, thank you so much for that update. Let's go straight to Washington and speak with our James Matthews. And I mean, James, it's extraordinary when you think where Peter Mandelson was 12 months ago, frankly, 6 months ago, and the images we saw today.
Hi, Yalda. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I was there in the Oval Office when Donald Trump and Peter Mandelson, standing by him, signed the UK-US trade deal. Mandelson was... Keir Starmer's was the UK's point man in Washington for a range of reasons, clearly, but principally that was job number one in his in-tray when he got here. Hugely important, hugely wired into communications between the United States and the United Kingdom, and that's an issue now, of course, because there will be files that pertain to his appointment and to his vetting that in the coming days are going to be made public, given over to the Intelligence Committee. What will they contain? One wonders. Mandelson, famously indiscreet, and we wait to see what he communicated with regard to his relations with Americans and particularly America's president. But it's striking on so many levels. Mandelson, you know, he carried the controversy lightly through Washington. And I remember in the Oval Office, very much a pillar of the establishment that day, Yalda. We doorstepped him. You saw it in John Craig's report. Asked him about his contacts with Epstein. After that, he excluded Sky News from all embassy events, all embassy briefings. He just kept us at a distance. And that was the way that he operated, that he insulated himself from questions, prying questions as he would have it, but fairly obvious questions, as many others would. Many questions about Mandelson being asked in that UK police station, but of course, many being asked more broadly here, particularly about the Epstein affair. This man was a child sex trafficker. What contact did he have with Mandelson? We've seen some of the files. Mandelson standing in his pants, Mandelson having taken money into Mandelson accounts from Jeffrey Epstein. The Americans here from the House Oversight Committee, they want to hear from him. In the past couple of hours, they have tweeted about his arrest, and they finished their post saying, as we have said before, no one is above the law. We will make sure. That's Democrats on the Oversight Committee looking into the Epstein affair on this side of the Atlantic.
James, Molly, thank you both so much. Well, as you've been hearing, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was questioned by police last week, also on suspicion of misconduct in public office. He's currently 8th in line to the throne, but that could change if Commonwealth countries support the UK's plan to remove him from the line of succession. Today, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese backed the decision, as our royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills reports.
As police have continued their searches at Royal Lodge, there has been no sign of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. But the noise around his arrest has not gone away, especially over his position as 8th in line to the throne. A letter from Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese just emphasising the global reach of the Andrew issue. Dear Prime Minister Starmer, he writes, in light of recent events concerning Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, I'm writing to confirm that my government would agree to any proposal to remove him from the line of royal succession. I agree with His Majesty that the law must now take its full course and there must be a full, fair and proper investigation. These are grave allegations and Australians take them seriously. It comes after the government announced on Friday that they were looking at legislation to remove him. But in order for that to happen, the 14 other Commonwealth realms, where King Charles is also monarch, need to agree.
I suppose it's the start of the process of getting the governments of the Commonwealth realms involved. It seems like the Australian Prime Minister might have done this off his own bat. But it might show that there isn't much opposition to this amongst some of the Commonwealth realms.
The likelihood of Andrew ever becoming king could not seem more remote when you look at the line of succession. But for those above him, the pressure to respond continues. William and Kate at the BAFTAs on Sunday, again seeing that everything they do or say is going to be analysed for hints at how they're feeling.
You need to be in a quiet state. You'll be in a calm state. I'm not at the moment. I'll save it when I'm feeling ready.
The monarchy is suffering at the moment from the fact that its reputation is hugely damaged, and it will want to see to it that a solution is found, that those who need justice receive it, that those who have behaved badly are addressed for it, and that justice, as the King said, is seen to be done.
At Raw Lodge, Andrew's former home on the Windsor estate, the searches had continued throughout the weekend, with police still there on Monday. So far, the palace haven't directly commented on Andrew being taken out of the line of succession, but there is unlikely to be any pushback. The King's statement from last week emphasising how, for now, he must remain silent as the police continue their investigations, while not turning a blind eye to the enormity of what is playing out. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News.
Well, let's go straight to our Nicole Johnson, who joins me live from Sydney. And Nicole, just to pick up on the point that Rhiannon made there in her piece, I mean, Australia may have sort of kicked this off, but the other Commonwealth countries need to agree to it as well.
That's right. You need all 14 countries where King Charles is head of state, but clearly Australia has decided it wants to be the first. Anthony Albanese, the Prime Minister, was on morning radio talking about how Australia likes to lead the way in these types of things. So the government thinks it's a moment. They've been speaking with other Commonwealth countries, especially in the Indo-Pacific, outlining what their position is, and it seems that other countries will follow Australia in this. This news came out overnight, so people here are still sort of waking up to it. There's been a huge amount of attention in Australia as well about this case. People are talking about it in cafes, and I think most people will support the government's position. I think the most serious line in that letter that we just heard was, these are grave allegations and Australians take them seriously. And the other reason Australians are so invested in this story is because Virginia Giuffre was living in Western Australia, and she was living in WA when she died by suicide. So there's a huge amount of attention here as well, and not a great deal of sympathy for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. People are wondering how this is all going to play out, and I think most people will be satisfied to see the Australian government taking some kind of position on this.
Nicole, as always, thanks very much for bringing us up to date. You're watching The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Still to come, Mexico's president calls for calm after a prominent cartel leader was killed in a shootout with the military. What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
Historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report. And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News. Is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is.
First off, just the scale of what we're looking at.
Our data shows it's been happening. Question is why it hasn't been stopped.
They called him El Mencho. He was Mexico's most wanted and most feared drug cartel boss, head of what the US describes as one of the 5 most dangerous criminal organizations in the world. Yesterday, he was killed in a military operation aided by American intelligence. And here's what happened next. Buses and businesses torched, roads blocked, hundreds of flights cancelled, residents and tourists told to shelter in place. And now a very real fear that his death could fuel a turf war between rival drug trafficking gangs. The country's president says things are now returning to normal. I'll ask a US citizen living in Puerto Vallarta whether he agrees. And I'll speak to our chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsey, about what could happen next. But first, here's his report on 24 hours of violence in Mexico.
In places, this is turning into a full-on battle between Mexican security forces and cartel gunmen. In the countryside of Jalisco State, the Mexican forces spread out as they move on gang-controlled areas. This is a battlefield beyond no doubt about it. The cartels are heavily armed. Violence has spread across cities and towns in Mexico. Firefights breaking out when the security forces approach. They're driving around streets on motorcycles, closing them down, throwing road spikes to burst tyres. Gang members have ransacked shopping centres in an orgy of violence. Banks have been attacked and set on fire by the cartels. It is chaos, and that is what the gangs intend. The violence follows the killing of this man, Nemesio Rubin Oseguera Cervantes, known simply as El Mencho. He died after a firefight with Mexican Special Forces. El Mencho was the head of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, a notoriously brutal and well-armed gang whose tentacles reached to 40 different countries and all of the United States. Violence after the killing or capture of a drug boss is common here, but this is different in that the violence has spread to tourist destinations, and many of the visitors are from the United States. Their predicament made worse by the widespread cancelling of flights made to and from destinations where the violence has spread. There are also long-term consequences for all of this. Guadalajara is a host city in this year's World Cup, a city hoping for thousands of tourists. Many may now have second thoughts. President Trump has been ramping up pressure on Mexico to take the fight to the cartels. This operation on El Mencho is a big success, and the United States crucially helped in its planning and intelligence. Mexico's president says the priority now is to keep everyone safe.
The most important thing at this moment is to guarantee peace and safety of all the population, of all of Mexico, and that is being done. Today, there's more tranquility, there's government armed forces, security cabinet, and there's a lot of coordination.
The production and supply of fentanyl from Mexico to the United States is a key part of President Trump's war on Latin American gangs. We have visited fentanyl labs, this one run by the Sinaloa cartel. They and Jalisco New Generation are big players in the production of the drug that kills thousands, particularly in the United States.
Todo lo que se procesa se manda para Estados Unidos o se manda para Australia, España, para Qatar, para a nivel mundial, Rusia.
What happens next isn't clear, but a turf war between the various cartels is more than likely, and all Mexicans know how dangerous and deadly that can be.
And Stuart joins us here live now. Stuart, I mean, you described the situation as chaos. This is, I guess, the cartels sending a message: you don't mess with us and get away with it.
That's right. I think there's a variety of phases that they go through. There's always, when a big player is killed or captured, a show of strength. And that's actually to sort of tell the authorities, don't carry on any more raids. That moves then into another phase, which is often where the cartel finds itself under pressure from other cartels, and they may well be fighting amongst themselves or with those other cartels. And then it can move on to them saying, well, actually, no, we're going to attack the government. And that is a calculation that the President of Mexico has had to make for herself, because it is very possible that they could organise themselves to attack. And they've already got the Sinaloa cartel that they're battling with, and these are the two big ones. So they would have two fronts. She's obviously made a decision that this is the right thing to do, probably because of President Trump.
And that's what I wanted to get to, Stuart, is this also risking all of this, knowing what could happen, just to send a message to Trump, we are taking this seriously?
Yeah, definitely. He's been putting more and more pressure on the Mexicans, amongst other Latin American countries. Obviously, in Venezuela, the then President Maduro has been taken to the United States. He's been threatening to attack Mexico and say that if they don't do it against the cartels, he will do it. She's been holding him back, but saying, listen, we are carrying out operations. This is one of the biggest ones that's ever been, one of the most successful. But it does have consequences, and economic consequences for the country generally, because it could all grind to a halt. And obviously, great potential for violence. I suspect the violence that has happened, such a number of areas in the country, will have taken them by surprise. They would have known something was coming, but probably not so as big as it has been. But we are told now that things have calmed down significantly.
So, Stuart, I guess the question is, what next? Because, you know, as you say, there are potential for so many other variables, like turf wars, like, you know, attacking the government. What do you think, from your understanding and analysis of their thinking, is going to happen next?
Well, I think they're not going to be able to completely destroy any cartel unless by just taking out the head, because there's just always somebody to replace, even if there's bloody violence to get to that point. And I don't think that New Generation is going to stop business. But if they want to actually destroy the cartel, they have to take out all of the middle people. They are the link between the higher echelons and the soldiers, if you like, on the ground. And without that middle, the soldiers slowly, surely fall apart. They're very young as a rule, and don't have much money and all the rest of it, and they're dependent. You'd have to take out that middle cadre of the cartel to actually destroy it. And to my knowledge, that's never actually happened by the government. It's happened because of other cartels taking cartels over. And I think the other thing you've got to remember is the cartels are part of life in Mexico. They're part of the businesses. The legitimate economy, it still has a huge amount of cartel influence in it. So, and there's corruption everywhere, through all levels of society. So I don't know how. I think what it might do is calm things down may calm things down, perhaps in the medium term, but getting rid of the cartels themselves that are so ingrained, I'd say it may actually almost be impossible.
I've got about 40 seconds to go, but I'm curious to know, you have spent time with some of these cartels. What makes this particular group so dangerous?
They are very nasty, very, very dangerous, brutal. We've been warned by our contacts in Mexico for many years to not try to contact them. We have tried to contact them, but they just don't want to speak to the press at all, and we're told they're just too dangerous to do so. We know the Sinaloa cartel quite well, for example, but you can't actually trust what New Generation are going to do at any time. And they've always, I think, because of the way where they came from and the fact that their grouping is quite young, relatively speaking, that they have no problem with being incredibly violent.
Extraordinary stuff. Stuart, thank you so much. Well, joining us now is Jay Baer, an American citizen who lives in Puerto Vallarta in Mexico and witnessed the violence there. Thanks so much, Jay, for joining us. As I said, you've got a place in Puerto Vallarta. You saw this thing unfold. We saw it there in my colleague Stuart's report. But just tell us, from your point of view, what did you see?
It started off as a regular day, and then we started to see some plumes of smoke, and then another plume, and it seemed so strange. How are so many fires burning simultaneously, and why are there no sirens or fire trucks? And then we started to see social media reports that so many vehicles were being carjacked and then lit on fire to block all the roads throughout the entire city. And then more and more fires were taking place. So the air quality got quite bad for a while because no emergency vehicles could access the fire, so they just had to burn until they finished burning themselves out. And then the second phase was, as Stuart mentioned, very young cartel members on motorcycles with guns riding through the city and burning stores, mostly convenience stores, mostly corporate, large company-owned convenience stores, and that occurred right in front of our house.
That's, I mean, quite menacing, knowing that they are there out in the open operating in this way. Did it feel like, OK, this is going to somehow at some point get under control?
For a while, it was very unsettling because there were no police or army presence to be seen at all. And at that point, you think, well, what is the next step of this campaign? But mid-afternoon yesterday, you started to see army helicopters, army vehicles, army boats in the ocean in front of the house. And thereafter, everything started to simmer. And then today, it's very, very calm indeed. You would never know anything happened yesterday unless you happen to see a burned vehicle or a burned building.
So the president, other members of the authorities have said the situation is now under control. Is there nerves, though? Are there nerves that perhaps this could flare up again, or you could see turf wars?
Absolutely. Historically, when the cartel lashes out like this, and I thought Stewart's reporting was exemplary on this issue, usually it's a one-day sort of show of strength, and then that's kind of it. But this is also unprecedented in terms of coordinated violence like this across 3/4 of the entire nation. So there is a perception that perhaps this is just round one, and that round two could come today, tomorrow, next week. So it is a little bit more concerning than it may have been in the past.
Yeah, because, you know, what we know, and Stuart sort of mentioned this as well, is that the cartels are deeply embedded within the economy of the country, within the society. They have a hand in, you know, many of these tourist resorts as well, in terms of how they run and sort of, you know, the funds that come out of that on all levels. So, you know, the government doing this is quite a bold move as well, because the risk is quite high and there's a lot of uncertainty.
Absolutely. And then that's a part that seems so foreign to folks who don't live here, that the cartels are omnipresent here and that they literally do live side by side with legitimate businesses and tourists and Mexican nationals. It's just part of life here. And it's very easy day to day to even forget the cartels exist until you are reminded, as we were yesterday, that in fact they do exist very much so. So that is the concern, that I think everybody would love to see cartel power diminished, but at what cost?
And I guess the final question then is, what do you expect to happen now? You're an American citizen. Are you thinking of going back to the US until the situation calms, or are you just going to wait and see? And I wonder what other Americans and foreign tourists are thinking about doing in this moment.
I've answered a lot of social media questions about that today, about should we come, should we stay, what should we do? We're going to sit tight unless something else reoccurs. It is very, very calm today. The military seems to have firm control, at least of Puerto Vallarta. I can't speak to all Mexican locations, but I think we'll sit tight and take our regularly scheduled flight home, which is in about 3 weeks.
Jay, appreciate you joining us and giving us your thoughts there on the situation in Puerto Vallarta. Thank you so much. Well, tomorrow marks 4 years since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. 4 years since Russian tanks rolled across the border. Now the grinding war is being fought not only in the cold, muddy trenches, but also with advanced technology. Our international correspondent Alex Rossi spent time with drone hunters defending one of the most contested regions in eastern Ukraine. Here's his special report.
The Ukraine war has become a grinding test of attrition where movement on the map is measured in meters, not miles. And in the frozen wastelands where the fight is being waged, it feels never-ending. And at stake, huge consequences, not just for Ukrainians, but also Europe and the wider international order, about whether borders can be changed by force.
On the grounds, the conflict feels less like grand strategy and more like a slog to survive. These soldiers are tasked with defending one of the most heavily contested areas of the Donbass, known as the Fortress Belt.
4 years in and fatigue is setting in. We are skirting around the front lines at the moment, and no longer can Ukrainian troops move in large formations. It's simply too dangerous. The threat of attack from drones is ever present.
Just getting to positions has become a test of nerve. Going forward means moving on foot, often across open ground. It's terrifying.
Quickly, there's an FPV. We're just heading to a new frontline position, and we've been warned that there is a first-person view drone, an attack drone in the sky above us. So the soldier we're with has told us to wait here and just try and take some cover.
The soldiers scan the skies and use handheld drone detectors. It's now heading over our position and hunting for a target. The radio alerts us. It's tracking back. The drone detector doesn't stop bleeping. Our movement has been spotted. We hear it before we see it.
What?
It's getting closer and closer. Another soldier joins the fight, and then relief as we see the drone fall from the sky. But we need to move quickly as more may come, or artillery could be called in on our position.
So they've just shot down the drone, and we've just been told the skies are clear again so that we can move forward.
A Ukrainian surveillance drone follows our progress as we get on quad bikes for the next leg of the journey to the village where the unit is stationed. Offering some protection, it is an eye in the sky. Speeding forward, smashed Ukrainian vehicles lie abandoned. A stark reminder of the danger we're heading into.
As drones have started to dominate the skies, Ukraine is now answering that threat with teams of drone hunters. And we're on our way now to meet some of them. Привет.
The small unit here is operating in the shadows, helping protect the logistical hub of Sloviansk, a key city for the entire defensive line.
We are just a few kilometers from Russian positions, and we've joined an air defense unit, and their mission is to shoot down attack drones as they come past. We're very close to one of the main supply roads here, and already, since we've been here, just in the last 10 minutes or so, we've heard 3 drones pass overheads.
Inside their bunker where they live and plan their missions, they show us a drone they shot down that morning. It's cheap, mass-produced and deadly.
There are men working with pump-action shotguns because the drones fly at their lowest altitude there. That is within the effective range of a shotgun. But here, they fly higher and faster, so the Kalashnikov is the most effective weapon.
The drones are relentless, and the landscape here has been battered by this war. But the soldiers want to show us that, incredibly, in this hellscape, 2 people are still living. For 4 years, Alexander and his wife have survived under constant bombardment. He tells me, of course they're frightened, but they have no money and nowhere to go. As we talk, we move for cover. Another drone's been spotted above us. For the men defending this territory, they know their work is perilous, and also what's at stake.
Icy roads, sleeper drones, flying drones, and the Russians. It couldn't be more dangerous. There are threats from everywhere, within seconds.
Life in eastern Ukraine is a desperate fight for survival. We're taken to a secret location deep in a forest. Access to the brigade's headquarters is heavily restricted, and as we enter their bunker, we head deep underground. Inside, it's a labyrinth of screens and monitors, reflecting what this war has become. It's now a conflict of microchips and mud, a place where drones circle their prey and men do anything to survive. The commander shows us what's left of a group of Russian soldiers who were trying to use the mist to launch a probing attack. The surveillance drones and the algorithms see everything and everyone.
The war has changed fundamentally. We used to fight on horseback, so to speak. Now we fight in the sky. We're even taking down helicopters with drones. Not my brigade specifically, but there are units doing it.
They then conjure up another image of a water tube where Russian troops were spotted entering. Attack drones are called in. No one comes out.
Logistics are currently a nightmare because technology has evolved so much. Drones are flying almost everywhere. If the enemy spots a vehicle, it's highly likely to be quickly destroyed.
The 21st century has been fused with the muddied trenches of the First World War. It's grim and brutal.
The fighting here may seem remote to people thousands of miles away, but the implications are not. This war will determine whether might makes right in the 21st century. Whether international law is enforced or eroded. After 4 years of merciless combat, the battle for Ukraine is about more than territory. It's about the kind of world we get when the fighting stops.
Alex Rossi reporting there. Let's return to our top story now. Peter Mandelson has been arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. He's accused of passing sensitive information on to paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein during his time as business secretary in Gordon Brown's government. It comes after the arrest of former Prince Andrew last week, also on suspicion of misconduct in public office. Both men deny any wrongdoing. Let's speak now to Joshua Schiffer Former defence lawyer for Epstein accusers. Thanks so much, Mr. Schiffer, for joining us here again on the programme. We've seen these arrests over the course of the last week. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor last week, and of course today we saw Peter Mandelson being arrested. Just give us a sense of the impact of all of this on survivors, because they've been calling for the longest time for accountability. How do you think they'd view this moment?
The vast majority of them are very pleased that the accountability is happening, despite the length of time, despite the betrayal that originally, when this matter was being disposed of in the courts in the U.S. Virgin Islands, one of the benefits for the survivors was the anonymity and the conclusion of this sordid mess. But obviously, other factors took over. And we are now going to deal with continued exposure of the victims, and there are literally hundreds of these women, most of whom are thankful that their names are not being openly included. And the ones that I've been in contact with are very satisfied that at least something's happening. I believe there's strong disappointment that it's not happening here in the United States. And this recent arrest today of Lord Mandelson, the arrest last week of the former prince, and the other accountability programs taking place across the globe really shines a light on what we are not doing here in the United States, which is increasing the demand for action.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to get to, because, of course, this is action that the UK is taking. But what does accountability look like in the United States?
So far, it hasn't been anything but voluntary accountability. We've seen some very prominent business and local and political leaders stepping back from their companies. We've had the sale, people retiring, maybe even some foundations' names changes. There have been separations, but no prosecutions. The only real person that's been prosecuted as any of the Epstein fallout was Ghislaine Maxwell, who is currently serving a lengthy sentence in federal prison, with the issue obviously being that there are allegations she's received benefits from some of her cooperation or for other unknown reasons, as she's not being held in the same conditions as other similarly situated inmates. I believe what really everyone is waiting for is American law enforcement agencies, of which there are numerous, for one of them to take the next step and start prosecuting people.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard from the likes of former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene posting on X today, calling for, saying the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, what we saw today with Peter Mandelson, shows what other governments are doing is not happening in the United States. Do you think this sort of thing, though, puts pressure for action to be taken in the US?
Absolutely, and we're hearing it louder and louder every day. I'm very thankful to the UK and other countries for being responsible, looking at the facts that we all can see about these relationships, how they weren't disclosed and how so many of them were improper. Now that we're getting what the investigations that should have happened or been taken more seriously back decades ago, we're very happy that's moving forward, but we want it here. I believe that America is not going to rest until there are prosecutions, and the longer the United States government in its various forms withholds those prosecutions, the angrier the populace is going to get.
What do you think is going to happen next?
It's really hard to predict the vagaries of our current administration. Obviously, President Trump is in charge every single day and is going to share his agenda and lean on the people that support him to promote that agenda. Right now, it's clear he wants to move past the Epstein issue. In his recent comments about it, when it comes up, he's very dismissive. He doesn't want to address anything. And that's facing literally endless questions from his hand-selected press corps asking about what's going to happen next. What about this person? What about that person? I think that the pressure is going to continue to rise on the outside, and we may see breakaway leaders, different people outside the formal administration, start calling for law enforcement in its various forms to begin cases almost outside the president's control. The president only controls the Federal Department of Justice. The individual states have their own investigatory powers, and I won't be surprised to see one of them take a step before the feds.
So just briefly then, you think that eventually, this will move beyond President Trump and his resistance, or at least his belief that I have done this, this is now a chapter that's closed, the files of what we believe are out there, let's all move on?
Yeah, I believe that there is going to be a prosecution at some point. The big question is really who's going to bring it. Our Department of Justice has become very politicized over the last couple of years, I'd say the last decade. That's a big change from prior history, and there's a lot of pushback against that from the academic and centrist universe that really runs America. Our president and leadership are very often reflective of some of the more extreme groups, the loud groups when it comes to elections. But the vast majority of Americans believe in law and order and that we should have law enforcement pursue their duties appropriately. If there is the big piece of evidence, if there's a clear crime that's within the statute of limitations, I would expect a politically aggressive or someone with a political appetite to bring that case forward and force a public reckoning.
Joshua Schiffer, thank you very much for joining us here on the programme.
Thank you, and I hope everybody has a wonderful evening.
We've just heard from the family of Virginia Giuffre. In a statement, Sky and Amanda Roberts say, "We commend the British authorities for taking meaningful action and treating the Epstein files with the urgency they demand. While these arrests aren't for the underlying exploitation, they are a crucial step towards truth and accountability. The contrast with the continued inaction in the United States is undeniable. Survivors deserve transparency, swift investigation, and real justice, no matter who is implicated." Well, here, the Prime Minister will once again be facing questions over Mandelson's appointment as the UK's ambassador to the US. Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch has said it is a matter of when Starmer goes, not if. Joining us now is James Lyons, former Downing Street Director of Communications. Thanks very much for joining us here on the programme. This has once again put a very sharp focus on the criticism around the Prime Minister and his judgment.
Thanks so much for having me on. Yeah, I mean, these have been extraordinary scenes tonight, hot on the heels of that amazing picture of Prince Andrew in the back of a car being driven away from a police station. We have seen the man who was the ambassador to the US only 6 months ago, basically given a perp walk by the police in front of the world's media who are outside his home. So, yeah, this is a bad moment for the government and for the Prime Minister.
Yeah, as you say, a bad moment, a headache for the Labour Party, because it almost felt like he'd pushed it to one side and it keeps rearing its head and emerging again in his intro where he has to deal with the chaos of this.
Well, this is one of the really difficult things for Downing Street, is that this is just one of a number of very difficult moments that are going to be connected to this case. Whatever the outcome of the police investigation, and who knows where that might lead in the future, we're going to see released in just a matter of a couple of weeks or so the first tranche of a huge treasure trove if you're a journalist, Pandora's box if you're a politician, of communications between Peter Mandelson and ministers and aides from the government. And we simply cannot know what that is going to throw up, even aside from all of the issues around Peter Mandelson's appointment. And actually, with the police saying that the documents or the messages relating to Peter Mandelson's appointment can't be released now, we're going to get this kind of drip, drip, drip effect with possibly the most damaging stuff to come at the end.
And again, that question around the Prime Minister's judgment around this. I spoke to people about the vetting process, for example, a few weeks ago. These big questions are going to continue to be asked around him, his judgment.
Absolutely. But, look, what I would say is a lot of people, including Kemi Badenoch, are being wise after the facts, right? Because the information that has led to police taking the action that they have today has come to light since Peter Mandelson's appointment. And it's not just that the government didn't know, they couldn't have known, because amazingly, these communications with Jeffrey Epstein were being done on Peter Mandelson's private BT internet email account. which is not something I don't think ministers will be allowed to do today. But you're right, there will also be, the questions around the original appointment, but certainly Kemi Badenoch and others weren't raising those issues when Peter Mandelson was appointed.
I've got about a minute to go, but I just wonder whether you think the Prime Minister, the government, can recover from this blow, because as you say, in a few weeks' time, we're going to see another tranche of these documents coming out.
And in the weeks and months after that, more documents coming out. So this is going to be a recurring problem for the Prime Minister and for Downing Street. It's a very, very difficult issue, of course, and with the Prime Minister, you have lots of cards to play, so you can get through these things. But I don't think anyone's underestimating how difficult it's going to be, and it's certainly not the backdrop you want for a by-election, which is going to be held just in a couple of days' time.
Thank you so much for your time. Really grateful for it. Well, that's all from us tonight on The World. I'll be back tomorrow at 9 when we'll be focusing on the experiences of ordinary Russians and Ukrainians after 4 years of war. The Wrap with Anna Botting is up next. Good night. Thank you so much. Really grateful for your time.